Hi guys, welcome back to the Bogey Men podcast, where we are into episode 5 and 6 of Full Swing, and we're delighted to be joined with Malachy Clerkin again. Malachy, it's great to have you back. It's been a while since we chatted.
Great to be asked, lads. Thanks a minute.
Yeah,
You
it's
add a
been,
sense of like gravitas to the
I do,
podcast
yeah.
that we definitely don't have week in, week out.
God, you are struggling for gravitas now. If I'm the one who's providing it.
it's the accent as well. It always helps.
Yeah.
It adds a bit of flavor to it all.
So, what did you make of the series overall? We were saying off record that, like, let's say if you were to rate it out of 10, what would you give it?
I mean, I think I'd give it a 7, and it'd be a soft enough 7. It might be more a 6.5 than a 7. I liked it well enough. I've said to a few people, like, the makers are in like it, or if I didn't sit for all of it, or if halfway through it I just went, oh Jesus, this is great, it's a load of shite. It's not a load of shite. I think that's what the Netflix people can put on their review from Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times. It's not a load of shite.
Yeah,
that's it. They can have that one for free. I thought in places it was brilliant. I thought the Brooks Koepka episode, which there's nothing original here. I think everybody thought that was unbelievably good. In the realm of sports broadcasting, never mind golf. I think it's very, very rare that you see somebody at the very top level of sport laying bare the fact that they think they've lost the thing that got them there, and struggling so openly with how to deal with that. And whether if he had been a soccer player, a cricketer, a Formula One driver, whatever, to see somebody sit there and go, I don't know where my game has gone and I don't know how to get it back, was phenomenal. Like it was a brilliant piece of television. But like it was very good, obviously, and we'll talk about it in a while. The Tony Fino episode I really liked. Obviously, like, and I guess everybody loves the Joel Damon episode. The rest of it though was a bit patchy. I felt some of it was, I don't know who some of it was for. I thought it opened terribly. I thought the first episode was so dull, so incredible. Like the basic tenet of it seemed to be, here's two guys who are friends, and I'm not sure why I'm supposed to care about that.
It's very
like
true.
Jesus, like I love Jordan Spieth, I love Justin Thomas, and I really struggled to sit through 40 minutes of them talking about, their friendship and all that kind of stuff. I thought it was of all the episodes, it was the one that came across as the most fake, maybe, that it was the most sort of, these two guys basically said, well, we're going to parcel out a small percentage of ourselves to you, the Netflix cameras, for the purposes of this documentary. Whereas Koepka and Finau and Joel Damon, you got more of a sense of who they were. So I think overall, I think it was patchy enough. I think when it was very good, it was very good. And when it wasn't good, and we'll get into a bit of that with a couple of these episodes, there were very distinct failings that had. That would be my take.
Yeah, I think as a series, it really highlighted for me that people, not the players, are what make golf interesting. Yeah, Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas are incredible golfers and sportsmen, but are they interesting people in the same way that Joel Damon, we get the sense, is a very interesting person? Tony Finau is a very interesting person. Matt Fitzpatrick is a very interesting person, but you don't know the full extent of it, or the fact that the people around him are very interesting people. You just don't get the full extent of it, and we'll get into what I mean exactly by that momentarily.
But look, we love golf. We want nobody to come away from these podcast thinking that these are a crowd of lads that don't like golf or don't like golfers. But we have to be honest. A lot of golfers are dorks. A lot of golfers are absolute dweebs and nerds. And that's great for them. And it allows them to dedicate themselves to this stupid sport in a way that most of the planet aren't prepared to. And it's a sport that drives all of us absolutely insane. And you have to have a certain sort of characteristic and personality to devote yourself to the extent where you make it to the very, very top. But at the back of it, a lot of golfers aren't that interested, you know, and that it's hard for an 8-part documentary series to work around that. And actually, we may as well get into it with Matt Fitzpatrick. Like, on the face of it, like, they hit absolute gold dust with Matt Fitzpatrick because they followed him like as close as you possibly can get for the week of him winning his major. Like, they probably spent more time with him that week than Billy Foster did. And on paper, you go, okay, we've got this kid. He has been up and coming for a while. He's been threatening to make a breakthrough. And on the week that he made his life-changing breakthrough, we had all the access we could possibly want out of it. And yes, as the US Open is coming towards its end and they are able to pick out what him and Billy are talking about standing over the bunker shot on the 18th, it's brilliant. But Jesus, you have to wade through quite a bit of uninteresting stuff to get there. And that's nobody's fault. That's not the maker's fault. It's not Matt Fitzpatrick's fault. I burst out laughing at the very, very start of this episode. Matt Fitzpatrick is sitting down on his couch and fiddling with his mic and getting ready to talk. And the big, broad opening question from the Netflix reporter or producer or whoever it was that asked him says, "How would you describe yourself?" And Matt Fitzpatrick goes, quiet, pretty reserved, and you're going, yes, that's 100% who Matt Fitzpatrick is. I'm not in any way surprised. I've watched him play golf for 5, 6, 7 years. I've always loved the way he plays golf. But I have no doubt that he's a quiet, reserved young fella. And you're looking at it going, Jesus, if the whole idea of the full swing is to do what Drive to Survive did for Formula One, well, if you know nothing about golf and you couldn't care and you've never heard the name Matt Fitzpatrick before, and you see this quiet lad sit down on a couch and describe himself as, I'm a bit reserved, I just kind of get through my stuff, you're going, why am I watching this? Why? Yeah. Why? I have limited time. What on earth am I doing? How long is left in this episode? There's 40 minutes in this episode. Why would I want to sit through this? So, but as I say, they had him for the whole week and he wins the US Open. So of course they have to do it. So I'm waffling on a bit, but that is the problem I found with parts of the whole 8-part series, that a lot of the time they had access and they picked their subjects incredibly well and got incredibly lucky with some of the encore stuff that happened to their subjects. And it's later on, like even spending the week with Mito Pereira, he again isn't that interesting, and yet he had one of the most insanely interesting ends to a major that you're ever likely to have. But you have to wade through like a half an hour of him having barbecues with Joaquin Phoenix and all this sort of carry on until you get to him standing on the 17th hole of a major that he's leading and him putting it into the water, or the 18th putting it in the water, and you go, shit, like it was incredible ending, but there's so much filler to get there.
It's almost like professional golf in itself, isn't it? A tournament. It's
100%.
it's got 3.5 days of stuff you just have to get through to the back nine on Sunday. And in fairness, so I've actually started to look at this or think about it through a completely different lens. I've just started to watch Drive to Survive. The new series of it is just out. Now that was the preeminent, that was the one that forged the path for this. It is unbelievable how superficial Drive to Survive actually is. And the repetition in phrasing, in what everyone says. Do you know the way Amanda Balionis goes on? Whoever doesn't make the cut doesn't win any money. And they say that and they constantly, but they have that phrase in Drive to Survive. We just didn't know it. Do you know what I mean? It's because we're so attached to it. And I've started to, I've now looked at it through a lens where they actually got to they got to the next level. Like you scratch beneath the surface of Drive to Survive and there really wasn't a lot there. A lot of rehashed kind of phrases, a lot of rehashed imagery, and it now leaves Full Swing in a much better place to me. It's like, okay, that's not bad for your casual viewer. Yeah, got a bit more in depth. And then as we go into like the Matt Fitzpatrick level, I could not agree with you more, Malachy, around how lucky they got with the people they chose. The Mito Pereira piece, unbelievable. Like, what are the chances of that actually coming to fruition? And then ending in such that was nearly better than him actually winning, to be honest, because then it's not the great American story, it's a tragedy, and that's how it finishes. And then you have the Matt Fitzpatrick story, where you have Dan Rappaport, who was in college with him, layer on the fact that it's Matt Fitzpatrick and Wendell Zalatoris, who was in college with Matt's brother, and then wrap it up in this nice bow that Matt Fitzpatrick has won the US Amateur at this course. And now it comes to this almighty conclusion out of a bunker on 18 where he hits the shot of his, like there is only so much lightning you can catch in a bottle, and they managed to get it. And for me, that was, they managed to make the most boring character into the most interesting episode. I felt like they probably thought, oh, fuck this Matt Fitzpatrick fella, how are we going to get anything out of him here? Like, you're sitting with his laptop and doing his stats and all this stuff, and there's only so much that can give you back. Whereas the Brooks Koepka story is dramatic. It's the fallen hero. It's the can't see my game, and you're all this in the background knowing that he's signed a contract for loads of money because he doesn't feel like he's going to win a penny anymore. And then you've, as I said, the literally most nondescript lack of kind of, even the family are quite
they're
standard,
just a nice family.
two up, two down, nice family.
It's a nice Sheffield family, you know?
Probably don't even have too many arguments. Like, there's no drama to this.
No,
and yet they chose him and they got everything that they could possibly get. And then at the same time, you layer it with his partner in the episode, who is DJ.
Yeah.
And they always seem, and it comes down to, I think it's just the nonchalantness of DJ as to, God, I'm pretty good at this game, aren't I? Yeah. And Matt Fitzpatrick, who seems to work so hard at it, and they're like, let's just throw these in. And it comes out to be, for me, actually, it was my favorite episode of the lot.
That's interesting. The counterpoint between the two of them, I thought, though, was something they could have lent into a bit more. And look, we know we come to this as golf fans, so we're obviously looking for the golfy bits in it. And obviously, if you get too deep into the weeds of a game as technical and as maddening as golf, you probably lose the outside world fairly rapidly. But I did think, especially with this episode, because DJ and Fitzpatrick are two such monumentally different golfers.
And people, it seems, as well.
And people, but away from even the people part of it, on a golf scale, they approach the game in completely different ways. Like DJ hammers the hell out of the ball and has a brilliant wedge game and short to mid iron game. But Fitzpatrick is one of the best putters possibly the game has ever seen, but certainly of the modern era. And those are two completely distinct parts of golf. And this is something that I thought was lacking all the way through the series. And again, I preface it with saying, I know if you get too deep into the weeds of the actual sport, the outside world maybe starts to glaze over. But I did think that instead of the minute and a half of Matt Fitzpatrick driving around the streets of Sheffield, which is very tough for anybody to give the slightest shit about.
Yeah.
They could have really spent at least 90 seconds getting him to talk about putting. Because it's like 4 or 5 times through it, you would hear somebody, and like they made a point of cutting Rory out, and they probably got him to say it about 5 or 6 times, saying golf is hard. And that's a theme all the way through. Golf is hard. How is it hard? What is the hardest part of it? Everybody knows that the bloody hardest part of it is getting this ball into the hole. And here you have the guy who is absolutely one of the best purveyors of that component of the game. And instead of fine having him go around the back streets of his old place, or fine having him, sit down with a laptop and statistically analyze every part of his game. Great. Matt, talk to us about putting. How hard is it? How do you make it easier? How do you get so good at it? Why do you leave the pin in? Why do everybody else not leave the pin in? All that sort of stuff. I would have taken like 5 minutes on that. But obviously 5 minutes of it would have been way too much for the type of series that this was. But I just thought that there was so much, and like Johnny, you're exactly right. The whole idea is people, not golfers. Tell the world who these people are, not so much about what golfers they are. But I really did think that, especially because Fitzpatrick and Johnson are two such different golfers, the game is hard for everybody. It's hard for both of them. How do they find their way to get the ball into the hole? I thought there could have been that, and I thought there could have been more of that through this series of explaining to people who know nothing about golf. If all you're doing is telling them that golf is hard, well, that's fine. But like at some point, you have to tell them why it's hard, and it's hard because the hole is the size between your thumb and your forefinger, and you have to get the ball in there from 500-600 yards away in like 3-4 shots. That's why it's bloody hard. How do you do it? How do you make it less hard? And that was, if I had one sort of overarching problem with the series, it's that it was a bit too general on the fact that this game is tough. But like, why is it tough? The margins are so small. That's why we love golf. That's why we sit and watch it all the time, because the margins between winning a tournament and coming 10th are like missing 1 putt a day over 4 days. One shot a day over 4 days. The margins are that so tiny between winning whatever John Ram won in Riviera. What was the first prize? Was it 3 million quid? And 10th is like 500,000. So like, that's one missed putt a day. And I don't think you would come away from watching Full Swing knowing that the margins are that tiny.
No, definitely not. And I think Netflix almost Dan tried to get to the why is Matt so good at putting question, because he asked Alex during the final round of the US Open, Alex, why is your brother so good at putting? And Alex, I mean, as any brother would, just made a joke of it by saying, it's because he always had to try and beat me. But that was a storyline that you really feel like they could have gone down the road with. If Alex had gave us, like, obviously in the heat of the moment, he's not going to give us a sincere answer. But if that question was asked to Alex either that morning or post the event, it's a narrative that they really could have gone on in the edit. But it's a letdown. But I think this is a good introductory series that for Full Swing season 2, hopefully we'll be able to get into that point where, as they introduce characters or reintroduce characters, they can talk about this is their style of play, or this is how they get their ball in the hole. Because in the introduction to Matt as well, they did kind of lead into the fact that he had a lot of amateur success, but he was a small kid that didn't hit the ball very far. Whereas contrasting that to that, you had DJ, who was all 6'7" or whatever he is, bombing the ball 350 yards. But then they did go into the narrative that Matt Fitz has gotten a little bit longer and he's starting to hit the ball a bit further. But then they did nothing with that either. So they were like, oh, he hit the ball farther now, and that's all you need to know. And that's why he won the US Open. Do you think that this gave a good introduction to DJ, or who he is or who his life is? Because as we were saying, Matt's story was kind of like plodded along quite slowly until the final round. The introduction of DJ was chaotic and loud and brash and in your face, which was a very good, I think, out of the entire series, this is the best contrasting two players, because not only just as people, but as their golfers and their styles and lifestyles. I'd say Matt Fitz is very much like, we'll take it handy, we'll do my routine, and this is what we're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, play golf. Whereas DJ, like, he may be going skydiving on Monday and then skiing on Tuesday or whatever in the lead up to an event, because that's just the kind of person that he comes across as. I also found the line very funny that his brother was saying that he could have got a scholarship in like 4 different sports. You're like, no, I don't think so. You're tall, but you're not that athletic.
Indeed, yeah. He's I think the DJ side of it is interesting because I'd say I'm right in saying this, but out of everybody in this series, maybe Rory, he's definitely on tour the longest out of everybody that was covered. Am I forgetting anybody? I don't think I really am.
Poulter, on PGA Tour for sure.
Poulter, I guess. Yeah. But he is somebody that we know purely by the fact that he has been at the top level of the game for so long. And God, it would have been some shock if we found a Dustin Johnson on a Netflix documentary that changed your perception of who he was. Because to be fair to the guy, he has never really made much of an effort to hide who he is. He likes to play golf. He doesn't think about it an awful lot. He doesn't worry about much in life. He has a gorgeous celebrity wife. He's the son-in-law of the greatest hockey player of all time. He is one of the greatest players who ever played. Like, he's a Hall of Fame golfer. There's no questions asked there. He's won his majors. He's won gazillion times on tour. He's won loads of money, and he doesn't think too deeply about the world. And that's who he is. And his stuff with Live, all that kind of stuff, he made it a very, very straightforward. Yeah. If you were working in a job that was telling you that you could do less hours in the office for more money, there'd be something wrong with you if you didn't take it. Now, like, to me, that's the most disingenuous bullshit you ever heard in your life. When you're talking about being bankrolled and being a stooge for the Saudi government. But I don't doubt for a second that he thinks that. Like,
that's the thing. I think that there is genuine thoughts. I don't think he doesn't peel it back to being. And in fairness, he, in all of his chats around the whole thing, he's the one who stayed stum on it. He's like, I have gone for this reason. End of period. Stop. Next page. And he continues that marvelously through this as well, doesn't he? Yeah, it's just poker face.
That's what I'm saying. That's like, authenticity is a huge selling point in a documentary like this, and that's why Spieth and Thomas pretending to talk to each other about the best man speech that one of them is going to give for the other, and Netflix filming both sides of the conversation. You're kind of going, oh God almighty, lads, right? Come on. Yeah. Whereas Johnson is who he is, and that's who he is in this. He's a very happy golfer who has gone to play for more money elsewhere, and you can think what you like about it, but it's not going to impinge on his day one way or the other.
I think with that then also came like the real introduction of Liv. There was Poulter, they touched upon it, but they didn't necessarily get into the event or the fact that the likes of DJ and Brooks go in really cause an existential threat for the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And that some of the big names came along and have now created a legitimate competitor to the PGA Tour, regardless of how it's backed. But I think that what they ended up doing toward the end of that episode, and like live is live, and I think we can go on about that as much or as little as we want to. I probably would have liked to have seen more about live, because this shouldn't be a PGA Tour series.
Yes.
It should be a golf series, and
Yeah.
they kind of touched upon the Matt's European Tour wins as not really counting as anything apparently, but all right. I would have liked to have seen something about the PGA Tour, the Live Tour, and kind of what it was going on about. But that all led up to the US Open, and possibly my favorite line of the entire series is Paulina Gretzky saying, "DJ is determined to show you who the fuck he is at the US Open and at the majors," because I don't think anyone has forgotten who DJ is.
No, or well, exactly, like, and we're going to find this through this year's major season. There are going to be fewer and fewer live golfers in it, just because they're going to fall out of them through the world rankings and all that sort of stuff. But you're always going to know who Dustin Johnson is. Like, you're always going to, as a golfer and as a person, when he goes to Augusta, he's going to be definitely in the top 10 contenders. Him and Cam Smith, nobody's going to go, well, there'll be questions around what sort of competition they've been able to have in the live tournaments, but their game has clearly fits Augusta, so you're still going to see them as the main contenders,
The live piece, going back to it as well. Did you feel that a lot of the animated and more, I suppose, I'm going to say outside of the Joel Damon one, the truthful responses to the golf world were coming from the live players or from the PGA Tour players? I felt that the PGA Tour players, Morikawa, Spieth, and Thomas, kind of conformed a little bit, and they were like kind of mind your P's and Q's, and whereas the live guys were a little bit more felt like they could probably share more or weren't as exposed by doing so. I
think you're probably right, but I'm not sure.
Or is that just the nature of the personality of the people who would go to live?
Yeah, I think you're probably has more to do with the fact that it was Ian Poulter, and it was Dustin Johnson. Had Spieth gone to live, it was never going to happen. But had he, I don't think that his way of interacting with the camera or with the camera crew would have been any different, particularly.
Yeah,
because I think he is who he is, and like, he's been around a while, and we know what his way of going on is. That is interesting, though. I hadn't really thought of it like that. That leaving the PGA Tour could have freed them up a bit more. I mean, it's definitely possible, but you are talking about Poulter and Brooks Koepka and DJ. Did Mito Pereira open up more because he was going to live? I suppose he didn't really know he was going. But I also found him quite dull, as a human. Yeah, I'd say it's more to do with just their personality and how they interact with the media.
And the reason I wanted to segue into Tony Fino's episode then was that the narrative behind Tony Fino has been can't win, and I think they tried to turn that key a little bit with him, and I don't think they actually got as far as to get the emotional response that they wanted, other than him probably leaning into the family side of things a lot more than anyone else. And then you realize that you're getting off the jet after he wins 2 weeks in a row, and there's literally 400 people on the apron waiting for him, all of whom are family. You're just like, this is the Polynesian piece coming out. But This is where I'm going into the next episode, which is I found then probably two of the more dull characters. As much as I actually like Tony Fino, he's just a family fella who plays a bit of golf, really, and there's not much more that he wants exposed, or maybe there's just not more to expose about who he is and what he is. Likewise, Colin Murakawa.
Yeah, I think you put your finger on it there with that phrase that he wants exposed.
Yeah,
I think we have to come back to that with everybody who took part. You know that, television is such an artificial medium. Can we really tell ourselves that we have found truth in what we're watching, even with somebody like Koepka, who seems to, open a vein for us? Is that so true, or is the true Koepka the guy who, in the last frame of his episode, when he's asked about Liv, kind of looks and winks at the camera, and you're kind of going, all right, were you really struggling with losing your game here, or was that all just a preamble for you to piss off and take like 75 million quid? Like,
get the excuse in first. Yeah.
So yes, we have to take the fact that we don't know what people's actual truths are, and we can't be so naive as to accept these as the natural truths. The thing I struggled a little with the Finau episode, I thought some of it was brilliant. I thought the stuff going back to his old house where he grew up, and the dents in the garage door, like that's an all-time, like, it's an all-time show me, don't tell me. Like, it's the oldest tenet of storytelling. Don't tell me it was hard for Tony Finau growing up. Show me. And for them to be able to go back to the housing estate where he grew up, and there are still dents in the garage door where him and his brother hit golf balls through a mattress so forcefully that it makes it look like an egg box, is phenomenal. Like, it is the best kind of storytelling. But the other kind is, and I know there's been a bit of this kind of going around since the episodes went out. I followed Tony Finau through most of his golfing career. I watched plenty of him. I know he had trouble winning, and that was kind of his thing. Until I watched this episode, I never heard a word about it being, it's because he's such a family man.
Yeah.
Now maybe that has fed into it, but it kept being repeated on this episode that, everybody looks at Tony and they see a great dad, but is he really a great golfer? And you're kind of going, I never heard that. I've read plenty of profiles of Tony Finau and plenty of interviews with him and all that down the years. I thought the reason he didn't win more was because winning is hard. Winning is incredibly difficult.
They told us a lot of times on this show. It's really hard.
But why can't that be enough? Like, why or again, winning is hard. Here's how hard it is for somebody like Tony Finau, who is an amazingly good golfer. Here are the times when he came so close over the years. Like, I would have. Why didn't they sit him down and say, "Here, you came second in such and such a tournament in 2021. Talk us through what happened that week." And if he comes back and he says, "Well, I was really missing my family that week," well, then that's something. That's, But it seemed to be an article of faith in this show that he had put his family ahead of golf, in a way that, like, there's a parallel with the Joel Damon episode. Joel Damon constantly keeps saying, I could be a better golfer if I tried, or if I was willing to, really, really throw myself into it. But, that great line, somebody's got to be the 70th best golfer in the world. Why not me?
It's a good one.
Which is fantastic.
It's a great line.
But like, anybody that has followed Joel Damon, like we have, like, that's who he's always been. Has Tony Finau really always been Yeah, I mean, I could be one of the best golfers in the world, but I've got all these kids, so I don't remember him making that excuse before or making it. Anyway, I could be totally wrong, but that just jarred with me a bit.
It's funny. It's funny how they manipulate that narrative to suit the story. So Joel Damon now is going to have a kid, so he's going to take his golf way more seriously, and he's going to win more, right? But Tony Finau has had 4 kids, so he doesn't have time to it. So where's the fucking truth here? Like, so it just they kind of zeroed in on something that was going to suit. Like, one guy doesn't take it serious enough, the other guy it's overbearing the family, and like, sure, look, we'll come up with a bit of an old spiel, and we'll let them work off that.
I don't doubt that it was partly a part of the season that they followed him. Like, it was clearly, his father-in-law died. He had gone through the death of a parent. He wanted his wife. He wanted to be a support to his wife. In the year following her father dying. I mean, I totally get that. My father died in 2015, and it took me a full year to really come to terms with it, and I totally get it. Like, I don't doubt the sincerity of that impulse on his behalf, and obviously bringing your family on tour with you is a rarity, across the PGA Tour. Very well, a lot of them don't have families to begin with, but the ones that do, it's very rare, obviously, to bring them as a kind of a traveling circus with you. So I totally get making that part of it, but there was just that I felt that they went a degree overboard in kind of going, that big family that Tony Finau has is the reason he wasn't able to win before. And now that he has them with him, sure, he can win 2 weeks in a row. That's like that apart from anything else, that totally upends, the thrust of your whole series, in that winning is hard. But of course it's so hard that some weeks you just have it. Like, that to me is almost a far more interesting thing to delve into. How can you just have it for a fortnight? Where you win back-to-back tournaments. Like, people don't win back-to-back tournaments. It happens once every 2 or 3 seasons. And it's a bolt from the blue, right? Obviously, post-Tiger. But it's a complete bolt from the blue when somebody does it. And it's because for 8 rounds in a row, they are totally zeroed in. They are seeing the hole like a bucket. Every drive is going exactly where they want to it. They're fading it with just the right amount. They're chipping and putting. They're scrambling. All of it comes together. The planets align, and nobody knows why it happens, because if they did, people would do it all the time. That to me is interesting enough as a conceit in itself. Whereas tacking on, well, he's able to do it now because he has his family with him. I don't doubt that that's a part of it. But sure, Jesus Christ, everybody'd have their family with them if there was a perfect formula, So I thought that was it just got a wee bit tenuous to me.
It feels like they almost created or overdid that narrative, because it's almost as if they already knew that they wanted Colin Murakawa, who was newly married and only travels with his wife and dog, and has no other distractions. It seems like that was already a pre-planned narrative for that episode. So they needed someone to totally contrast that. And I feel like they probably did Colin Morikawa. Sorry?
It's just a bit too perfect, that comparison.
It's a little bit too convenient. And I feel like they almost, in that same vein, if you're to look at it as, Colin Morikawa's episode rather than Tony Finau's, they almost, I feel like they probably did Colin a little bit dirty. They make him seem almost emotionless, where, he doesn't care about, because he does make that reference to Tony traveling with his family and his kids. And you kind of go, oh, I mean, was that a planted question to get the answer that they wanted to make, almost like there's some kind of wild, this is some wild thing that Tony is doing by having multiple children. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I think then that sense that Colin's he's a dominant personality who does everything his way and he has no emotions like comes across when the only insight to his life we get is when he's at some Adidas clothing meeting, and you just get no sense of him as a person apart from the fact he doesn't like a t-shirt.
Green trousers.
Yeah. You're like, okay, well, I mean, it just seems like they went very deep on a narrative for Tony to show a hollowness that may not be there in Colin Morikawa at all.
I think that is fair to an extent, but I'd counter it by saying that if Colin Murakawa gave them anything more exciting than him sitting in an Adidas meeting and surrounded by lackeys and him giving them the thumbs up or thumbs down to all the work that they had done designing clothes for him, I sense they probably would have included it. So I came away from it going, Jesus, the Morikawa stuff that's on the cutting room floor must be fairly dry. If this is as much, and like, again, you know, we watch more golf and consume more golf media than most normal people. Are you surprised that was the Morikawa that came across? No. Like, has he ever given you a sense that there's more to him than that? Now, whether there is or there's not, that's the Morikawa that he has pretty much always sent out into the world. That's how he has presented himself in the 4 or 5 years. Jesus, it can't even be 4 or 5 years, 3-4 years that he's been on tour, that he's been a force, that he's been someone to be reckoned with. He goes back to what I'm saying, like, golfers are dorks, golfers are pretty, you know, bland individuals. This guy looks to be an incredibly smart, incredibly controlled 25-year-old sportsman, and a lot of sports people are dull. Like, we forget this. You know, they have an ability to do a certain thing in a way that a tiny percentage of the world's population can do it. They don't. It's no bad mark on them not to have a personality on top of that. Loads of people have great personalities and can't do any sport. So, you know, like, it's just human nature. And I watched the Morikawa stuff and went, yeah, that's kind of who I thought he was. I would have loved, like, an episode around him, around, you know, what it's like to be a 25-year-old CEO of a sports business, like, which is what a golfer is. Like, a golfer is a sports business. Like, he has an entourage that depends on the rises and falls in his golf game, and all the ancillary stuff that goes goes into a golfer's life away from the course. I think he does seem somebody who's interested in all that, whereas, like, say, DJ doesn't seem like he's interested in all that. But you could see a world where someone like Morikawa, who's obviously very smart, could talk you through the reality of all that and could get engaged on that level, you know, far more so than he's engaged on the idea of bringing a family around, or, you know, his dog or whatever else. You know, he, to me, was somebody who would have prospered from not so much getting to know the person, but getting to know the reality of that life. And I think he could have given an interest and insight into all of that. But no, overall, he just seems quite dull. Just a brilliant golfer who's a dull human.
I know why this is, and it's taken me a while and listening to people chatting about it and talking about it, and I was trying to think of where the pieces of media that have got the most interest out of people, as in, like, where have they seemed to open up, or where are they most natural. So Nolan just a piece with Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, ironically enough. It was an hour and a half. They played in Kahlua on the court, but followed it shot for and got so much out of their relationship with each other. how they interact actually in real life. And you get an insight into what's the dynamic, how good friends they are. Morikawa, about 3 years ago for Scratch, did a piece with his coach on the course that he grew up in. And they went and they played the course and showed how the course got too easy. So they invented a course within the course. And this is what they played. Max Homa did something really, really similar. And I was like, they interviewed all of these people off the golf course, which was the most interesting piece that we got out of this, was actually the day that Joel Damon played the qualifier for the US Open.
Yeah.
And you got to see that was the only mic'd up day that he knew, and they followed them closely. And where you got a real sense of what the actual interactions were between us, like, fuck, Gino, am I going out here? Like, I couldn't be bothered. We'll just have a beer and we'll be fucking grand and leave it. They've put all of these interviews came about with golfers are generally, as you've said, like dorks, dweebs, nerds, socially awkward, not great in camera, don't interview well. Most of them don't interview well. But yet all of the information that they were trying to pull and the interesting points they were trying to get in the series were all tried to pull out of interviews. And they're like sit-down interviews. And it's just not going to get any of the content that you wanted to do. Whereas if they just did all of this on a golf course where they are at their most comfortable and where they are themselves and really themselves as professional players, because it's the only place that they're truly, truly, truly comfortable for a lot of them. Would you have got the stuff that we're talking about that we really wanted out of it? Would you have got more of it out of that? And I think that was the piece that they're just been interviewed in such an awkward place for the first time. They don't want to open up really. No one really wants to let you in too far. Like a crack in the door is all the line of sight that you're going to get. Because when you've seen them been interviewed in other places, you're actually going, do you know what? Colin Murakawa in his natural environment can tell an interesting story about relationships with coaches. He wasn't the richest kid on the block by any means, grew up on a public course, still has the same coach that he always had from when he was 15. Got a really good scholarship, turned into one of the best players in the world. Like, won in 10 minutes away from where he went to college, won his first major in Harding Park. So, like, there you go. Do we get any sense of this at all? We don't, because I just feel that they picked on them in the wrong place.
I think it's a great point. I think it's a brilliant point, because it is exactly as you say. These guys are brilliant, like interplanetary brilliant at one thing. And we have a series like this judges them on something completely different that there's no earthly reason to expect them to have a facility for. You know,
like the nature of being golf is a loner. You're an introvert. You're selfish. You're not really the best person to be around a lot of the time. And we kind of get a glimpse of this in the PGA Tour at the moment when they actually mic them for a full hole and they go through the process and they just listen in. And all of a sudden that is separating itself as in golf production at the moment. It's like, actually, you know what? This is pretty cool.
It's true. And Morikawa did one last week.
And all of a sudden, how much, this is where I was finally getting to. Who was good? It was Colin Murakawa. Like, Keith Mitchell was interesting. Like, Keith Mitchell is a cashmere sweater wearing, visor wearing, slacks wearing, mid-30s man from white America, and we're going, actually, do you know what? That was actually quite cool.
But again, Dave, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, they tried, I think, to take this away from golf for the general viewer, and I get that, but I think they might have done themselves a disservice, as you very, very acutely observed there, that I think they might have got more out of these people in their natural environment.
Yeah, it's just I just felt that the sitting down in camera, like they're just going to clam up. Like, think about it. These people are just not designed for that. Like, but like, you can listen to golfers when they're on a course. My God. And it's the reason that they get, if you're getting a corporate gig for a golfer, you do not put them into a room where they sit down on a panel. What happens? You go and you do one of those clinic days, and all of a sudden you get all of these nuggets because they've got it. Once they've got a golf club in hand, it's like the crutch. It's like a hypothetical crutch that they use. That once they're in their national environment, there's so much. Like, do you remember? So, for instance, do you remember Tiger doing a clinic and that great clip came out, and he's like, I think it was something along those. Well, if you're intimidated by me, well, that's your fucking problem. Like, could you imagine him sitting in like Nike.com or Nike corporate office?
Yeah.
You're never, ever going. Tiger, who's so pitch, wants to have the best side forward, and he's basically saying, well, that's your fucking problem. So, and it's only when you start to talk about all of these things that it actually comes to life. It's like, oh God, if they'd only done this on the golf course. Genius, I know.
Yep.
Revolutionary.
Right. Do you have anything else, any kind of lasting or final memories from the first two episodes?
The last thing, and I wanted to see what you guys thought of this. What do we think Full Swing Season 2 will be like? I have a notion, and this was part of my disappointment with the first series, is that anybody who's going to subject themselves to doing the second series will have seen the first. And so anything they do will probably be informed by it. Are they going to open themselves up like Brooks? Maybe not. Are they going to have a gimmick? What are they going to try and have a selling point, like bringing their family on tour, or their knockabout relationship with their caddy, or all of this sort of stuff? And that was my slight, what sort of fed my disappointment, because you only get to do the first series once, and everything that comes after it is sort of informed by it, whether consciously or unconsciously. So I wonder what the second series is going to be like, because like, as you were saying, Dave, like, can they possibly be lucky enough in who they're going to pick that they're able to get like 2 episodes that follow the guys who win the majors or who are in the majors right to the very death, and be around those guys all week in 156-man fields? It's hard to see that. So I just wonder what impressions do you guys have of what season 2 could possibly be?
I guess for me, it'd probably be tell the stories that us golfers probably want to know, because you can assume a certain level of knowledge now, or you would like to assume a certain level of knowledge from season 1. So like we spoke about the Billy Foster kind of role with Matt Fitzpatrick and him being a wise old head on Matt Fitzpatrick bag. But we know that, and we also know that Matt's first win at the US Open was also Billy Foster's first major win. And that's an incredible story for a caddy that's been in the game for so long, and for that to have been his first major win. Tell stories like that and follow people like that, and also like the role that a caddy has. We kind of got into that with Gino and Joel and their relationship, but that was more of a we're friends who are also a player and caddy. Whereas if you got like a professional caddy, like a Bones or a Billy Foster or someone, I spoke about the importance of a caddy to the player's success. That would be a pretty cool episode, I think, from my side. But maybe even, if you followed like Rory or Jordan's race to the Grand Slam, like both of them are kind of there looking to complete the career Grand Slam. Will they ever do it? Here's what they need to do it. And why is that important? They also touched upon the fact that only 5 players have done the Grand Slam, but why is it so hard? And you only have a certain number of chances in your career to do it if you're a top level player. Something like that gets like, when it comes to the Masters, every Irish person was rooting for Rory to win the Masters, to complete the career Grand Slam. You want something like that for this series where people go, oh God, he didn't do it again. That's devastating. Next season.
I'm going to be really cynical, and I'm going to say that they don't know what their narratives until the season ends. They have 7,000 hours of their own footage, plus all of the stock footage that they have from the PGA Tour. Like all of those stories and narratives were drawn up once they knew what they had. Like we're talking 8 hours, not even 8 hours that makes it, of like thousands upon thousands of hours. Like this will we as kind of people in golf, we will know by the end of this season what way they're gonna profile, depending on who comes out as their target. We'll know and say, if it is Jordan Spieth, it will be completing the Grand Slam. If it is Rory, it is the road to the Masters and the disappointment and or that will exist out of that. If it is Brooks, it may be the potential return from Liv. Do you know all these kind of things? We'll know about it. That's nearly the problem. Whereas I go back to the Drive to Survive, I can't really remember how the championship finished last year, so I am viewing this as a neutral. It's all clean and clear to me. Or sorry, it's all a clean slate to me. Whereas this, there'll be too much of it that's told you.
I'd be interested.
But look, that's fine.
I'd be interested. Even just to go back to the start of our conversation, like I'll watch it, and they're in trouble if the likes of us aren't going to watch it. But I do wonder what direction they will go. Will they lean into the golf a bit more? Will they? I mean, obviously, top of their agenda would be to get Tiger to sign up to it next year, which is unlikely, I guess. But it's it's fascinating. In fairness to them, like it has people talking. Whether and not much of their sports output does that. It's funny. I was flicking around Netflix last night, and because I watched Full Swing, they were trying to sell me loads of other kind of golf stuff, and I was going, "Who knew there was so much golf content on Netflix?" And I flicked through 2 or 3 different ones and get 5 minutes into them, But it's fascinating.
So we've 2 episodes left, and we'll see how it works out. We have watched them all, so we'll probably I think an hour of discussion on this one is probably on 2 episodes. The irony that they shot 8 hours of footage, we managed to spend an hour actually just talking about it. So look, there's content galore to be gleaned from this kind of stuff. But no, looking forward for getting the next 2. Malachy, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the time. Thanks for, we'll say you sat through it just for our benefit for the podcast. We know you're far too much of a golf nerd yourself, and we'll see you down the track soon.
Not at all. Thanks a million, lads.
On the tee, Jack Nicklaus.
This is the minute that millions around the world have waited for.
We will allow you to enjoy all of this. They are dancing in the pubs of Dublin. Harrington with an ace.
And we have a shining star at sunset. Rory continues his run to greatness. The return to glory.